Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Felicia. This is Winnie.
Hello.
We have a very interesting topic to cover today, which is about... Okay, I see a few more people. Let's just welcome them. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Please fill up the seats in front first. Okay, yeah. So we were just saying that we have a very interesting topic to cover today, which is about navigating dating and relationships. So before we begin, I just want to get to know a bit of the audience. How many of you are currently in a relationship? Okay. How many of you are single and ready to mingle? Okay, I see some hands at the back. Okay, some are a little bit shy. Some are, what do they say? It's complicated. Well, in any case, welcome. Today is going to be very interactive.
Yes.
We will make it a little bit of a dialogue, but the topic is really about how young people can better prepare themselves and navigate the different stages of relationships. So whether you are still thinking about getting into a relationship, looking for someone, or you are already in a relationship and you just want to see how to make the relationship thrive, that's what we are here to share. So a little bit about us. I'll let Winnie introduce herself, but we met in Choice. We are facilitators of Choice Weekend. I've been in Choice since 2006. That's a very long time. And I think Winnie is a little bit more recent.
Yes.
So in our outside our doing
Choice
this,
community.
outside the Choice life professionally, I am a business coach, and Winnie is
A couple therapist and relationship coach.
a couple therapist and relationship coach. So she'll be sharing more from her professional point of view, whereas I will be sharing more from my life experiences, having been single for a very long time and finally meeting somebody. So the interesting thing about us, the things that we have in common, we both met our spouses through...
Online dating.
So we
Yeah.
both met our husbands through online dating, and she got married in 2008, and I got married just last year. It was a COVID wedding in 2020. It was quite memorable, to say the least. And Winnie, would you like to share a little bit more about yourself?
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, that I work as a couple therapist, and in my work, I mostly see couples who are struggling. And so, I really want to do a bit more work in terms of intervention and share about how young people can actually find the relationship of their dreams. So this is a wonderful opportunity for me to be here in this dialogue together with Ellie. Yeah, and being a part of Choice community has also helped me a lot in building certain competency that I'll be talking about later on, like, for example, self-awareness and insight.
Thank you,
How
Winnie.
about you, Feli?
So for me, I have been in Choice since 2006, like I mentioned. So I came to Singapore in 1998. I'll let you guess which country I was from. And the story is that I graduated from NUS, I started working, I climbed the corporate ladder, the usual stuff. I was known as a very confident lady. And it seems to be a disadvantage when it comes to dating in Singapore. When you're labeled as capable and confident, men run away, far, far away. It doesn't help that I am 1.7 meters tall, and that eliminated half of the market. So I was single for a very long time because I am not so young, even though I may look a little bit young. But I was single for, I think, more than 15 years before I found the one. And obviously, those 15 years were filled with many failed attempts, right? But again, I'm sharing a little bit more about how to navigate from the point of view of someone who has been there, done that, been through all the challenges as well, and how learning the competencies that Winnie mentioned earlier helped me in navigating those challenges and eventually make the relationship work, and it's going pretty well right now.
Wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. So let's talk about the current trends. What are people facing in the market? These are the American stats that more and more Americans know someone from online dating. There's a local article in Channel News Asia that said post-COVID, online dating users have gone up. because now people have more time to be on the dating platform, and they're expecting that the number of relationships that emerge from this online dating will rise post-COVID. So that there is at least one good thing that came out of COVID in Singapore, because government always encourage people to have a relationship and settle down, and it looks like COVID helped the online dating scene on this front. Now, we want to hear a little bit from you. Don't worry, this is a totally anonymous poll. If you can take out your phone, scan the QR code, or go to slido.com and enter the code. Can you please share with us what challenges do you face in your dating life? We want to make this as relevant as possible for you. So please, please, please help us by entering. Like I say again, it is anonymous. And it is really to see what everyone is facing.
I also remember the challenges that I faced when I started dating, or like trying to find the right person for myself. And at that time, there was no app, right? So it was slightly different era. It's not as convenient as now. But I think the challenges that I faced then was really about putting myself out there. Being not quite sure whether that was the right thing, or whether I should be that bold enough to really pursue, something that is important to myself. But I wasn't sure how my friend would perceive me if they knew that, that was what I was doing. So these were some of the challenges that I faced back then. But I think right now, the online dating is a lot more acceptable. I've known of so many couples who started out that way, and they have really good relationships. So there is hope that it's possible to actually find the right people. And if you are feeling demoralized, just think of the two of us.
Yes, that there is hope. All right, so let's look at what everyone is saying. Can't find decent guys, not the same religion, relationship, stage, pressure. Wow, pressure. Person serious, knowing, seeming too interested, meaning we seem too interested to the other person. Finding the right person seems to be a recurring one. Opportunities to meet new people, and trust issues. Okay, more and more. Okay, keep it coming, guys. Again, this will help us to understand what everyone is facing. Okay, so if I can just scan, it seems we need the more common ones are about finding somebody. There is also a little bit about differences in expectations, and trust issues, as well as religion-related. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that. I'm pretty sure that you may have seen some of this. Yeah, so let's move on. And related to that, what is the problem? So what is everyone facing nowadays? Everybody just now shared your challenges. For me, I think if I can share, because my experience was quite recent.
More recent, yes, that's right, yes.
Is that in online dating, trust is not a given commodity, right? When you first meet someone online, there are a lot of questions. Number one question that I always had is this person a scammer? Have you had something like that? Have you met any scammer online? Okay. How many of you use online dating apps? Oh, don't be shy. This is a safe space. Okay, I see a few hands coming up. Yep. If you don't do the online dating app, how have you been meeting people? Joining activities? Schools? School activities? Classmates?
Friends' recommendations.
Friends' recommendations. Okay, so the thing about this online dating scene, it changes the way people interact, right? Because in the first place, you are not to be trusted until proven otherwise. Does that make sense? Yeah, so when we meet people online, you're not to be trusted until proven otherwise. And sometimes, isn't it tiring to small talk with so many people just to find out that half are scammers? So I personally find it tiring. It doesn't help that our lives in Singapore are always so busy, isn't it? And the other thing is the pandemic, when we get tired of online dating, right? I've used all the apps that you you probably are familiar with, you get fatigue. Do you find it? Like after some time, you get fatigued and you feel, no, I give up on this online dating thing.
Yes.
I don't know whether you experienced that, Winnie?
Yes, for sure. So I was doing online dating for about 2 to 3 years. And then it will be like for a few months. And then after that, I gave up and say, this is not working out. I don't want to do this anymore. And then a couple of months later, I'm like, I'm still not finding people, so let's get back on it. And then you try. And so to be really, really open about it, my husband was my last effort, because I told myself that if I'm not going to find anybody from this last effort, I'm just going to be happily single. So God answered my prayer, and it happened to be. So yeah, it turns out that way. But it was very demoralizing and disappointing when you can't find the right people. You have to be vulnerable. You have to share about yourself. You need to go through that process to be just hurt after that, right? Like you have your hopes up, and then you have your hopes broken. So that was quite painful process. I'm sure you have that experience. What kept you going, Feli?
Yep, definitely. And so for me, the lack of commitment part was personally very frustrating. So I'm very upfront when I do this online dating. Hey, I'm here for a relationship. I'm not here for a one-night stand. And that, again, eliminated a certain percentage of the market, because there are some that are just very upfront. Hey, I'm just here for a good time.
Correct. Yes.
And the thing is, some people have the perception that this is a male thing, just want to have a good time. But it's not, So apparently I've been told that a lot of women also are there just for a good time. And the other thing is, to move from just chatting online to meeting is one hurdle. And then to move from meeting to actually going out regularly is another hurdle, right? After the first date, some people think you are too tall or too outspoken and whatnot, and then it doesn't go.
That's right.
And there are also those that, no, I just want to meet, but never get into an actual relationship. I just like enjoying my time with you. I want to go out with you many times, but I'm not ready for a relationship. And the other thing is, like I said, it's so time-consuming. Now, the other point that some of our friends here today shared was about religion. What are your thoughts on the difference in religion, Winnie?
Yeah, the differences in religion can be a big issue, because it can also be like a deal breaker for some, like if you're not of the same faith. So for myself, my husband, he wasn't a Catholic when I first met him. But then we were able to talk about it, and praise the Lord, he was willing to also embrace the faith, so that solved the problem for me in some ways. But I think that, I think as a believer, we would like our partner to share the same faith, and, because it guides all our principles and all that. So, but I also have seen couples who are of different faith, and in that case, they would need to be really open and be able to communicate. I think the openness to hear why it's important to each other, why faith is important, is also quite a good start if you have that openness. Yeah.
I agree for sure. And the thing is it possible for a couple with different religion to really thrive? And what do you think it takes to overcome that difference?
Okay, I think what will really help them to thrive is respect and understanding. Right, and I think you will also need to be quite skilled at having difficult conversations, like really initiating those conversations, what's important to you, and be able to really express your thoughts. So you would also need to know a little bit more about yourself, right? What's important to you. Only after having that clarity, then you'll be able to share that or communicate that to your partner. What do you think about that, Feli?
For me, I've also again met many different people from the dating life, from fellow Catholics to non-believers to against any kind of religion. And in that kind of journey, I think one thing that really stuck out for me was you need to find someone with aligned key life values. So sometimes may not be the same religion, but where you embrace the same life values, it can still work.
Yeah.
That's what I find. So for me, I get into that values-related conversation very early in my conversation. And then, so when my husband is a Ukrainian Catholic. So it's not a common faith, actually anywhere in the world, except for in Ukraine. So they are something in between Roman Catholic and the Orthodox Church. Yes, but it's still called Ukrainian Catholic. And when we first met, we got to know each other. I asked questions really around these key life values. I was saying, so this Ukrainian culture, because his family is very, very strong in the whole Ukrainian tradition, what is the culture about? And he was saying, food, family, and faith.
Wow.
Food, family, and faith. And I'm like, that sounds like me. And that sounds like my family too. We're all about family. We have a very tight-knit family. We love food. My mom's a very good cook. And faith is always a big part of my life. And my parents pray the rosary every night until they fall asleep. But, it was just a line. So I was less fearful in getting into it. And true enough, it has panned out pretty well.
Yeah.
But I think there are also cases where people have different religions, but their life values are very similar.
Yeah.
And I've seen relationships work as well in that context.
And I also have seen how maybe if one partner is not open to the faith, it will be actually a great chance for you to evangelize. So I've seen like a few of my friends who married a non-Catholic, but the spouse, they were open to attend Mass at the beginning, and then maybe at some point, like at their 10th year anniversary, I'm thinking of a particular couple, they got married in church because the first time they married in church, it was not like a full Mass because the spouse was not a Catholic. And I think in being able to share the faith with your partner, that can also be something that is wonderful because you are evangelizing, you are converting someone, you are sharing your faith. So that can also be something that is positive.
Yes, I agree. One of my friends has a similar story. They got married. The husband's not a believer, even though his sister is a Catholic and his wife is a Catholic. They had 4 kids. And they decided one day to go for a holiday to the Holy Land, pilgrimage. When they went to the Holy Land, through the whole teaching of the priest, there was their tour guide and official, storyteller for the whole trip. The husband felt the calling. And he got baptized eventually after more than 10 years of being married. So there are also stories like that. But I think it is also important to go in not expecting.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go in with the expectation and say that I want you to, I think it will backfire because then there is the additional disappointment. Yeah, so the best thing is actually to lay it out clearly and say that, this is important to me, but I'm going to give you the time to decide and just come and experience what is important to me. That invitation should always be there.
For sure. And now, so to navigate, since the problem is quite great, right? But yet we still feel that we cannot give up. So what does it take to navigate through this? I heard this term romantic competence first time from Winnie. So Winnie, would you like to share about the 3 elements?
Okay, so the romantic competence, what is it? It sounds quite big, right? It's romantic, relationship, competence, ability, and your skill, correct? So there are 3 components in it. One would be insight, mutuality, and emotional regulation. I'll just unpack each one of them quickly, right? Insight will be awareness. Insight will be, what do you know about yourself? What's important to you? What are your core values and all that? And it is not just about your own. So your partner should also work on his or her own insight as well, right? So that's a lot of the awareness. And for mutuality, what it means is about when 2 persons come together, you have different needs. And to make the relationship work, you'll be able to meet halfway, or you have to be able to kind of understand the competing needs and have the skills like communication, compromising and accepting influence. And thirdly, emotional regulation is about how do you manage your own emotion when you are feeling insecure about the relationship. Are you the kind that can approach conflict? Do you avoid conflict? People who avoid conflict most of the time has issue in regulating their own emotion. They may not want to rock the boat. They don't want to express what is truly troubling them. So that can cause a lot of problem. So I'm going to ask Feli about insight and awareness because in our conversation, you told me that that's something that's important to you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so the insights part, I think part of my benefit or advantage of having had many failed dating experiences is that you get very clear about what you want and what you do not want. No, like I said, in my working professional life, I'm a business coach, right? So we have this concept called the target market. And it stems from the struggles, like I mentioned, because in my many years professional life, I get tons of referrals. People always want to introduce to me, Fel, this person needs coaching, this person needs that. But do you know, for the many years I'm in Singapore, I got 0 referrals for dating.
Oh my.
No one thought that I was referable when it comes to romantic relationship, even though I get tons of referrals professionally. So, after a while, you even start to question. I don't know whether any of you have gone through this. You even start to question, am I really such a bad offer that I'm not marketable? But how come everyone wants to be my friends, just don't want to be my boyfriend? So I've gone through all that, and eventually, because I get the chance to travel everywhere, I discovered that I was just in the wrong market. So I discovered it's not that I'm not sellable, it's just that I appeal to a different target market. So what I ended up with, like my successful relationship, my husband is Australian, like born and raised in Australia, but of Ukrainian and Serbian heritage. So I had a very specific niche market. Seems that I appeal to this kind of crowd, and that is part of the insights. And it was not easy to really find that realization, especially when your own parents. My dad sometimes tells me, that's why you cannot find, because you are like that. And then you start to question, so is there something wrong with me? Is it me that is the problem in this thing?
Yeah.
But I have so much to give, and all my other relationships that are non-romantic seem to work fine. So is it really me that is the problem?
Yeah.
But after the realization, again, having gone through all that, then it is really about finding the compatibility. And I was very clear about what I wanted and what I did not want. I've been with people who are just very negative, very pessimistic. They expect the worst in life. And I know I do not want that. I've dealt with that most of my life within the family context. It drains me. So I was very clear I do not want someone like that. So when someone like that was interested in me, for once somebody wants me, but they had that kind of energy, it was hard, but I said no, because I knew it wouldn't work out in the long run. I knew very well that what I needed was someone who can love my family as much as I do. That was a non-negotiable, that they have to be able to care, because my parents will be with me. I have a younger brother, but he's not going to take care of my parents. So I already knew that my parents will be part of my package. So that was, again, non-negotiable. I knew that I needed someone who can love my parents just as much. Like my current, hopefully my forever husband, is very good like that. In fact, now we always tease my dad that he is now my dad's favorite child, more than me and my brother. Like things like that. And then once you know what you can and what you cannot take, then it is a little bit easier. So I wrote lists. I don't know whether any of you did that. I wrote a list. And this list was written maybe like 10 years ago. And I didn't look at the list for a very long time.
Yeah.
Interestingly, after I found my husband, his name is Ivan, I looked at the list one more time. It's still in my Google Keep. And guess what? Everything that was on the list,
He checked it.
he checked it.
Yeah.
He checked the boxes. And I did not realize it, but I think it formed a subconscious of the insights, right? What you want, what you do not want.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think I would also suggest to like those of you or those of the young people that come to me to actually have an idea and create that list. Because I think you know yourself, which is why the first thing is to know yourself. After you know yourself, then you roughly know what kind of people will be compatible with you. And so then you can make that list, but be flexible about it. Some people are very specific, right? Above 1.8, certain height and all that. But you can put it in a general sense, and then you fine-tune it as you go along, But start with a list. If you don't know what you're looking for, then you don't know where to go and find them, right?
Yes, exactly. If you don't know, you don't have a clarity, you don't have a target, you can't shoot your arrow.
Correct. So clarity is important.
For
and
sure.
insight offer you that, right?
And I think the other thing is, in my list, there were like must-haves, and they were good to have. Interestingly, being tall is not in my list. So my husband is exactly the same height as I am, which is, I guess, tall enough. Yeah. But the other thing about the list, though, some people get overboard.
Yeah.
They have so many things in that list that eventually no one can fulfill the requirement.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, Winnie, can we make it interactive? If, let's say, you have to have one item in your list, what would it be? Can we arrow some volunteers to find out?
Who wants to offer? Maybe you offer and share first. What's number one on your list? I'll start. Honesty. Right? Someone you can only build trust with someone who is honest. Who else have honesty? Maybe we can have a show of hands. Yeah?
Okay.
What
Yes,
else?
a few.
We need some courageous people to speak up.
One of my lists is like me as I am.
Acceptance.
Yeah. Accept me as I am. I'm like this.
Acceptance.
Yeah. Communication. Thank you so much. Yes.
And the values, key values have to be the same.
What would that be for you?
Oh, wow, that would be like, for me, religion is very important.
Sure.
And also like how we want to be together, go towards a marriage life.
Right. Yeah. So the direction, the vision should be the same. in that
Yep,
sense,
the life
okay?
vision. Thank you so much for sharing. Yay. Any more? Any more? Yes, thank you.
I'm a convert, so I was Protestant before. So my criteria was the husband must be Protestant.
Oh, okay.
So I got half correct, I got Catholic instead. So we couldn't get married in the church because I was not Catholic, he was not Protestant, so we get a normal
Yeah. Blessing.
marriage. And after that, I went with him for RCIA, and I turned Catholic.
Yay. Yay. Welcome to the family.
Any more? Any more? What's your number one thing in your list? We had good communication. We had aligned key life values, acceptance, right? Honesty. Anything else? Accept your quirkiness, okay? That's a good one. How many of you have a stable career in your list?
Or must earn certain amount of money.
Nobody. Oh, there's somebody. Yes. Isn't that important? Is it still practical for us to say we can starve together as long as we're in love?
All you need is love.
Yeah, again, these are the things that you may want to think about. Like some people are okay. Some people are okay. In fact, for me, in my list, I didn't have someone that has to make a lot of money. I just didn't want someone that I have to feed.
Sure. Yeah.
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 Because I already feed two older children, my parents.
Yeah.
So I felt that it will be very heavy to get into a relationship where I have to feed the husband as well.
Yeah. So it's quite important to think about this. How important is career? Do you want to marry somebody who is very into the career, and then there will be some trade-off. They may not be as involved in a family life, you see. So is family life really, really important to you? Do you want an ambitious or driven partner or husband, or do you want someone who is like can be a stay-at-home mom at some point and things like that? You know, so these are all quite important consideration, because practically that's what you will happen, right? If you don't think about it, you end up being someone who is idealistic, maybe like an artist or musician, but then you may have issues with financial, you know, like dependency and things like that. So
For sure.
these are actually really quite important questions to ponder and to think about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what keeps us going?
What keeps you going? To come out and do it again and again.
Yeah, so it was not that it was without struggles, right? I was sharing that many times I had to stop because it was just getting very demoralizing. And I will pause for a while, then I get back to my other things, you know. And then, okay, you know what? I still don't want to give up. I still want to come back. So part of the thing is the faith. I kept praying about whether you want me to find somebody.
Yeah, that's true, yes.
And if you don't want me to find someone, then maybe there is something else for me. Like I kept praying about that. And for the longest time, I always joke that part of the reason why God kept me single all those years was to be choice coordinator. Because I need to be a singles coordinator for X number of years. Yeah, I had to be single because the moment I got married, I had to retire, right? That was part of it. And the other thing that kept me going was the community support. Like I said, when you were bruised and battered, I felt that because I was part of that choice community where there were a lot of couples who are not the ideal on television type. They are super compatible, but they make it work because they choose to make the relationship work. They choose to stay happy and to stay committed to that love that, when they say their vows. So it inspired me to keep going. That's the other thing. Eventually, though, the faith proves to be true, I guess. So upon finding my husband, everything connected the dots. And I'm like, oh, no wonder he kept me single all those years. Do you know why? Because he only got to Singapore 3 years ago. And he is 5.5 years younger. Which means if I had met him 10 years earlier, we wouldn't even get together. So now I blame the husband. I told him, I had to suffer 15 years being single because of waiting for you. But again, it is really about the faith. And in the meantime, while you're discerning or waiting, to have that community support to me was really invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the faith and the support, or if not from the community, could be from your friends. Because when you are single and alone, the tendency to think that maybe I'm the problem is quite high. Like maybe, I have too high expectation, I'm not good enough, I'm not attractive enough and all that. So you do need to have friends who will remind you, no, you're actually good. It's just not your time yet. So you need that kind of a support from friends. And I think if you belong to a church community, that will be wonderful because you can really share openly and be vulnerable. And I think that more importantly for me, what kept me going was, I think I was also discerning, which is why I said that I was quite prepared to be single if my last attempt failed, So it is also learning to be comfortable with who I am. And I think that when we are insecure or we're not quite sure of ourselves, we may not be ready for a relationship. So I think that when I met my husband eventually, I guess I was almost there, not quite there, but I've done my inner work, I've done my processing, I'm reasonably confident of myself, so I don't need to I find a partner to fulfill me because I can do that myself.
Yep.
So I don't need someone to complete me, but I want someone who can journey with me, someone who can lift me up, someone who can be there for me. So I think that was quite important.
Yes. And I totally agree on that part where though you cannot be hanging your happiness on this new person that you hope to meet. I think at the point of life where I met my husband, it was because I was quite content. I was quite settled. My parents are with me. There are still ups and downs, but it felt like it was all right. Like even if it didn't happen, it would have been okay, but it happened, so it's even better. Yep. Because in the past, it used to be in the thought process, right? A lot of the times, some parents will say, but how can you be happy if you are not married? Yeah, and I've gone through that. My parents are that generation where when I was saying, this uncle had 3 daughters, 2 of them are single and they are perfectly happy, and he will tell me, how can you be happy when you don't have a husband? Yeah, and I was told that. But again, I got to a stage where, career settled, business running, everything is okay. And then when someone comes along, it just makes it a little bit better. And I think that's a very important thing, not to put too much pressure on the relationship being the key to solve all your problems.
Yeah, to key to your happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, we cannot surrender that.
Yeah.
There's only, your partner cannot be your God, so to speak. So we cannot put so much burden on our partner in that sense, right? So we have to also be mindful.
So the key learnings from our dating, Winnie, you want to go first?
Is that the same as the tips?
No, no, different.
From this, I mean,
Yeah,
the key learning for me is actually to take the first step, right? I mean, I can want to have relationship, but if I don't take any action, it will remain as an intention, right? It becomes an action where you do something about it. So, but how to do something about it when you're not sure, right? So you have to cultivate courage. You need to put yourself out there, be vulnerable, test it out. It will be very uncomfortable. So you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Meeting people for the first time is weird. Putting out your profile on the, is like, what do I write? There are a lot of new experiences, not very comfortable, but you have to be clear of your goal, right? If my goal is to find a partner, then I got to do it. So I think that courage, that awareness and taking action will be the key learnings for me. Mm-hmm. And don't give up. Persevere. You can take a pause, rest for a while, and then get back to it.
Yep. My personal key learning has something to do as well with the whole taking risk and being vulnerable. Because, like I said, the way we met was through online, and the trust level is very low. So it's very, very often, it can become transactional very quickly. It's just a matter of, no, don't hit checklist, move. But eventually, I think the connection needed to happen when you dare to be vulnerable. Yeah. So now we've talked a bit about the dating stuff. So now we want to, let's say you find somebody and you start going out, right? You have a steady relationship. The next question will be, what challenges do you face in making sure that your relationship will thrive? This can be based on your current relationship, your past relationship, but if you can, again, participate in this poll, what challenges do you face in making your relationship thrive? Can I give you a few seconds? Come on, guys. The more of you contribute, the more we can add value.
Yeah. Ego. Okay. And lack of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Related to your insight?
Yes. Thank you.
Anything? Any more?
Yeah, inability to communicate. I was thinking about that. That's what I see a lot in my practice also. Yeah.
Personality clashes.
Yeah, so we can talk about, must you be compatible? Must you like the same thing? So is it opposite attracts, or, birds of the same feather flocks together?
Wanting to avoid conflict, difficult conversations, difficulties in communications, inability to express myself properly, juggling various aspects of your life. Hey. Very good. Any more? Last call? Balancing priorities.
Yeah,
okay. Definitely. So we have a few juggling, a lot of them related to communication, difficult conversations, conflict, ego, overly argumentative. Interesting.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So it looks like we are on point because we're going to talk exactly about those, if you can see. Yeah. So maybe we can start from Winnie first. Winnie, having counseled so many couples, what are the things that we need to avoid first? Yeah.
Okay. The first thing that you need to avoid is bottling up your frustration and feelings, and not speaking up. You see, so that will be one of the key things. And I've seen pretty disastrous outcome when you keep bottling up what is that you're not happy, but you cannot really raise it to your partner. Majority of the cases that I see would involve some level of communication breakdown and problem. So I think what to avoid is like not speaking up the truth, not being authentic. So you would want to be true to yourself. If you're not true to yourself, then the version that you share with your partner is not you. Or if you feel like you need to pretend, you need to be someone else, you need to meet your partner's expectation, but you're not being who you are, then that will be a no-no. You will suffer at the end of the day. So I think what to avoid is, when you are not able to be free to be yourself. So I think that is number one, authenticity, you know. And then number two is like really learning the skills to express yourself, to have difficult conversation, you know, rather than, you know, just maintain peace and harmony. So I have some couple who tells me that, you know, our relationship is very good. You know why? Because we have no fights. You know, no fights. So no fight is the key indicator to a successful relationship. Do you agree with that? How is it possible that you have no fight when we are different people, right? So no matter how, when two person comes together, you come in with differences from the way you are raised, from your cultural background. Even if you are Chinese, you'll be different as well, you know, and things like that. So there will definitely be differences. So if you're not having conversation, you're not fighting, either one person is very, very agreeable, or you know, one person is super dominant, you just follow what I want to do. And then you may be able to sustain it for a period of time, but can you sustain it forever? That will be the question. So I have recently a couple just like that, married for 10 years, and the partner, the husband, is really very accommodating, very gentle, you know, and the wife is not quite attuned to his feelings. And over time, he got more and more angry, right? He got more and more angry. How is it that my wife is not attentive to my feeling and all that? And eventually realized that, you know, I cannot be with this person because I don't feel like my need is being met. But the problem is he didn't really express it clearly, right? And so that becomes a problem. Or he pretended, or maybe he wasn't aware. He thought that the best thing to do was just to maintain peace and harmony. Yeah, so that is something to avoid. What about for you, Feli? What is your experience of what to avoid?
So for me, in fact, it's the other way. It's the explosive. So you talk about bottling up.
Yeah.
So for me, it is also to manage the explosive anger type of situation.
Yeah. The one that too argumentative, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I have seen, and it's not just within my immediate circle, but I also have seen like other couples' friends, where in the quest to be authentic, they go very explosive. Once they reach a short circuit, the anger, you can't reason with them anymore.
Yeah.
And it became a shouting match because you cannot fight hard with hard, right? Yeah. So eventually, one of the things that needed to be avoided was that, like I say, the short circuit moments. That before it gets to that, communicate first. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't help that the social media keeps bombarding you with, you have the right to be angry. You have the right to lash out. You have the right. You're just being yourself. Yeah, but the thing is, you cannot retract all these harsh words that can damage your relationship irreparably.
Correct. And I think that's where some level of wisdom and insight is important as well, right? You know, what is it that is reasonable? You know, like, does it mean that, you know, you should be free to be who you are, that you can be the rudest people? So I have some couples said that, you know, at work, I'm already maintained, being polite and everything. So I should be able to be free to be myself at home. Have you heard that?
Yep.
Yeah, free to be myself. What does that mean? I don't need to say please. I can do whatever I want. But the questions that I have will be, do you want to be the best version of yourself when you are with your partner? Or do you want to offer the worst version of yourself? I mean, that is something to think about as well. You know, so a lot of time maybe people maintain the best behavior at work, but they come back and then they lose steam and then they have the worst behavior at home. You know, so that is something to also think about and reflect. Yeah.
So on the flip side, what do we need to cultivate? We know what to avoid, a few things. What do you think we need to cultivate then?
Okay. So the main thing that if there's one thing that I say would want to cultivate will be to cultivate the attitude of gratitude, to be grateful, you know. So when you are grateful, you're less likely to compare. You know, like my friend's husband did this for the anniversary, you know. You know, things like that. We try to look outside and think that the grass is greener on the other side. When you're grateful, you make sure that your grass is green here. right? And you cherish what you have. And also, your partner, nobody likes to be compared. So when you tell your partner that my friend's husband, wife did this, they will roll their eyes and say, whatever. So that doesn't usually work, okay? So gratitude research has done quite a lot of studies on this. When you have high on gratitude, you're happier. You know, you're better at establishing the relationship, better at maintaining the relationship as well, because you're focused on the strength of your own relationship. So connecting to that would be like, do you know what's the strength of your relationship? Like, how are you better together, right? You know, I always remember this from a wedding that I attended. Like, they said that 2 is better than 1. When you're married, 2 is better than 1. But if you're married and you don't think that 2 is better than 1, then something is not quite right there, right? Yeah. Because there should be reciprocity. There should be an added value, in, so to speak, like if you put it in a very transactional term.
I think that's related to the next point, which is about
Correct, yeah.
compromise and accepting influence. What is this accepting influence?
Okay, so accepting influence is you're open to other suggestions. So very simple, you know, like, are you open to alternative views? Because I have also seen some couple where they're quite dominant in their thinking, and so they don't accept influence. So like, for example, the alpha male, usually we have alpha female too, right? Alpha male and female, so they may be actually, they think that their opinion is much, much better. They plan, they decide, they are like the CPU, is it? You know, the brain of the relationship, and they don't really ask for feedback and suggestion, you know. So these are the group of people that tends to not accept influence very well. So accepting influence is connected to compromise. When you are able to accept influence, say, okay, I hear what you're saying, I'm open to trying that out, you know. We don't always have to eat Western food all the time. Right? For example, we can try other cuisine as well, you know, in small matters. But in big matters, you know, some may say that I don't have children, you know, and I don't want, that's the end of it. So that is not open to accepting influence. But I have something to say about compromise as well. So when you compromise, you should never compromise beyond who you are as a person. And I'll give you an example to illustrate that. So I have this couple, they are both of certain ethnicity, but the wife is actually vegetarian and husband is a meat eater. So when they got married, the husband's mother told the wife and said that you must cook all these dishes for my son. And they're all meat-related food, you know. And so the wife, who originally was vegetarian, said that, okay, in order to please my husband, I'm going to eat meat as well because I can't do like 2 separate dishes and stuff like that. So that went on for a long time until they came and see me 20 years later. And I said, see, I gave up. I end up eating meat because of you. Actually, that's not what I want to. It's against my religion. It's not even how I've been raised. You know, so that is an example of when you have gone too far with the compromise. You know, so you cannot do that because it builds resentment. So when you want to compromise, it must come from the heart of like openness and love and generosity, and say that, okay, this one I think is okay for me, you know. But if it is something that is so important to you, like say you need to give up your religion for me, then we cannot make compromises like that. So I want to set the boundaries as well.
So how do we know the boundaries?
You need to know yourself. So we are back to number 1, insight, right? What's important to you and what's not important to you. How about for you, Feli? What is important for you to cultivate and all that?
For me, the cultivate part is definitely related to communication. Like in Choice, we talk a lot about communication. And really, 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 you have to put that into practice. And for me, it's the whole developing the awareness that we process things differently. Some of you wrote personality clashes. So I chose someone who is of the opposite spectrum of me. I get energized by people. I'm like, oh, so happy to see so many people. After a games, like we play board games with my parents. So after 2 hours of board gaming with my parents, he needs to be in the toilet for half an hour. Yeah, so it's that kind of very different spectrum. And we also communicate very differently. I'm very expressive and I'm very comfortable expressing. And I am quite sensitive to people's emotion. So he is, again, the other way. he doesn't understand hints. You know, like the first time when we were supposed to meet face to face for the first time on our first date, I was dropping hints. Oh, my appointment cancelled. This is after a few days talking, and I was sure that he was no stalker or scammer or things like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm free tonight. Suddenly, my Friday night is wide open. And he was, so what are you gonna do? Then he was, I don't know, maybe do laundry. And then after a little bit of dropping a few hints, finally he asked, by the way, if this is a hint, can you tell me? Because I'm very bad with hints. So I went like, this is not a hint, this is a bloody blatant encouragement. Yeah, but again, the whole understanding of trying to understand the other person. Like, we are also very different culturally. As a coach, I ask many questions. As a choice facilitator, we live by asking questions. In his culture, you don't ask. If people want to tell you things, they will tell you, but you shouldn't dig. So the first few dates, he did not ask me anything about myself. When I ask him things, he will answer. And then when I share something about me, he will cut in and he will share his side of the story. Then initially I'm like, how come this guy didn't ask me anything? Is he not interested in me? Right? Because for me, if I'm interested, I will try to find out about more about you. And after that, again, my old self, my young self will just say, oh, he's not interested, he's not serious about this, he's not committed, bye-bye. But again, my mature, evolved self was, let's find out what's underneath that. So I brought it up. Hey, I noticed, and not in a confrontational manner. I say, hey, I noticed that you don't tend to ask me questions. Then for me, when I ask questions, it is because I genuinely am interested to find out and discover more about you. So what makes you, the keyword, what makes you not ask me questions? Because it cannot be because you're not interested. You ask me out 4 times a week, right? So it cannot be because you're not interested. And then he was saying, oh, I never realized it. I was raised that way. Because in my family, don't ask. If people want to tell you, they will. So then, again, right, the evolved self, then, oh, I see. So that striving to always understand the other person's point of view was very important for me.
Yeah.
And then the whole compromising, knowing that he is different, he's wired differently, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but then I tend to try and put on these glasses that see what's great about what he just did, rather than what's wrong with the whole day.
And that is so important, to focus on the good, right? So we back to kind of like gratitude. I mean, I really love the stories of, how you evolve, because that's what happens, right? Thriving relationship is one where you continue to grow. You become better and better version of yourself, and one of the movies that I really like is, As Good As He Gets, is it? As Good As He Gets, right? Jack Nicholson. He has OCD. And there was a line from that movie. Maybe you guys are too young for that. You can check it out.
I think it was before they were born, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But you can check it out. And it says, like, you made me want to be better. So you know that you are in a thriving relationship when you can say that you made me want to be better. So there is that growth mindset where you think that I am willing to change for the good of us. If I'm not a communicator, I will learn to communicate, because I have just seen a case where they ended the marriage because the partner say, I don't like to talk, so I don't talk. And there was no willingness to actually learn the skill, because these are skills, you see. If they are skills you can learn, it's not like cast in stone. So the reluctance in learning the skill was the cause of the demise of the marriage, which was really, really sad. And very, very unfortunate.
Yep. And I think that is also related to what to avoid. Like for me, it's the blame, excuses, denial. That it is always the other person's fault. That he should change. Because eventually, you cannot go into a relationship or even a marriage thinking that the other person will change. What you can change is how you react to them. And if they behave differently, because you behave differently now, then that's a good outcome. But you cannot go in thinking that it is the other person's fault. He is too like this, he is too like that, he must change. Because technically it doesn't work that way. Everybody wants to be accepted the way we are, right? We talk about authenticity. So I think it is really about having that mindset that the choice lies with me. I have the power to change.
Exactly.
I can change the way I communicate, and then with that, I'll get a different outcome. Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. So we'll move on, which to the third one of the romantic competence, which is
Yeah.
emotional regulation. And I think this is so related to what everybody shared in the
Yeah.
poll, right? Conflicts, conversations. How do you regulate emotions when facing disappointments?
Yeah, and I think that to sustain in any relationship, there'll be heartbreaks. You know, there'll be disappointment. There'll be moments when you feel like, oh my gosh, who is this person that I'm with, and all that. You see, so being able to regulate that emotion is very, very important. Like just sit with it and also say that, okay, I'm feeling this way now because I'm really angry, right? And then to me, I actually make a list of what I admire about my husband or the good things that he has done to me. You know, so when I'm very upset with him, I take out that list and look at it. You know, seriously. Because when you are angry, you are more likely to say you're bad here, and you forget all the good things that the partner has done. So that's one way to regulate, right? Regulate your own emotion by remembering the good in your partner at the worst time. And also to remember that nobody is perfect, correct? And so, you know, if I'm not perfect, then he's not perfect. Then we need to find some ways to meet it. But sometimes the disappointment or the hurt can be so overwhelming. And then you may, like, I mean, some of my couple, when they are angry, right, they must solve it. You know, they say that tonight we must talk. It doesn't matter if you have presentation tomorrow. I want to talk tonight, and I must talk tonight. And then the conversation goes on and on for hours, you see. So I'm just going to give you a tip. If your conversation is not resolved or settled in 2 hours, it will not resolve in 6 hours. So you better go to sleep. It's better to just wrap it up and you know, and say that, no, we take a break and we come back to the issue another time. It's a waste of time and energy when you keep going on and on about the thing when there's no progress. So we need to be smart about it as well. So that's also about regulating emotion, you see. I feel like I cannot sleep if I don't talk about it. So you have to learn to actually regulate and say, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to pray. Prayer always helps. Meditation always helps to kind of like settle you a little bit. So these are some of the skills, like to sit with the uncomfortable feeling. Very, very important. What do you think?
How about this saying, Winnie, that you shouldn't go to bed angry?
Yeah, I've heard of that. And I think that is quite damaging. I think that the idea is don't go to bed angry, right? So you can express your anger, but you don't have to fight over it, right? I can say that I'm really upset with you when you do X, Y, Z, right? So I've expressed it. But after expressing it, do you need to say now we have to have a fight or we need to really resolve it? So you can express it and then go to bed and say, okay, let's have a hug and go to sleep. We still have this problem between us. It cannot be resolved tonight. But I love you, I care about you, you're important to me, and so we're going to talk about it tomorrow or next week. But you must get back to it, like you cannot just sweep it under the rug. So the problem that I see in my couple is that when they say we'll talk about it, they never talk about it again. And that's when the resentment built, like, no, I need to talk about it tonight because you're not going to get back to it if we don't talk about it today, you see. So when you say that you need to postpone, take a break, be sure that you come back. Be responsible, be accountable, and get back to it. So some couple it may work for them if they want to really solve the problem. But there are two types of problem that I want to highlight. One is a solvable problem. So if you can solve the problem that night, good for you, you solve it. But the perpetual problems are, as the name suggests, you cannot solve it. Right? So then there's no point in engaging time and energy in solving your perpetual problem because you can't solve it. All right? So we need to be sensible also.
Yep, for sure. And then talking about that though, like how do you deal with conflicts and difficult conversations? Do you have any insights to share on this?
What about for you first? How do you have difficult conversation? I mean, that's really quite a topic, but I will weigh in, but maybe let's just hear from you first.
So the difficult conversation part, for me, having an actual conversation, even if it's difficult, is easier. What I find difficult is when people sulk, when they give me silent treatment.
Right, okay.
And maybe they talk behind my back or whatever it is. For me, I would rather you tell me to my face, we trash it out, and let's find a solution.
Yeah.
I'm like that. But I do understand why people sulk, because to them, that's their way of coping with conflicts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for us, the way that it has worked is we agreed. By the way, this if you are going into a relationship, we agreed upfront that whenever we are upset, no sulking. That's like our
Rules,
pact,
yeah,
our rule of the game. No sulking. Say it out, but say it in a constructive manner. So I don't raise my voice and whatever, because I also hate it when people do that to me.
Yeah.
So for example, just recently, in fact, this is just, 2 weeks ago, it was a very busy week for me. You know, running your business, it's a non-stop clockwork, right? Now, my husband works for the corporate. So he has a very good job as a software developer. He can afford to play games in the afternoon. And then we were on a weekend where I had to even work weekend because my new website was going live. So here I am on a Saturday, and I'm doing my work, writing for the website, and he's sitting there playing his Xbox, right? Which is quite common, by the way, girls. He's sitting there playing the Xbox, and then the dryer beeped. We do laundry on the weekend, the dryer beeped. So I asked, can you please take the clothes out of the dryer? Yeah. And he still continues playing. 10 minutes later, I said, can you please go and take the clothes from the dryer? Okay. He still doesn't budge. 5 minutes later, I stood up. Within 15 minutes, Asian efficiency. I took the clothes, I folded everything, I stuffed it into the wardrobe, and I got back to my work.
Wow.
And I finished everything. Then after dinner, I was feeling upset, right? I'm like, wow. Then I have to think inside, why was I so upset? And what should I do about it? Being constructive, remember, no sulking. So I sat him down. Hey, after dinner, I said, we need to talk. Yeah. And some guys will find we need to talk very scary, right? Am I right?
Yes.
We need to talk. But he's quite used to me because, again, I'm quite transparent. And then I said, you know how I have been so busy? And this. And when I'm busy, I get stressed. When I get stressed, I get triggered. I think remind me to talk about triggers. I get triggered. And when I ask you 3 times in the middle of me working on a weekend, and then you don't do this, you don't. Of course, there were other things, right? And the thing about being in that angry situation, it will spread
Fester.
like wildfire.
Yeah, fester.
Because of one thing, you will remember another thing, then you will bring in another thing. So I just felt it makes me feel unsupported. So what do I need? Because I always believe I have to volunteer first. So what do you need from me? What do I need to do so that this can be solved? Instead of, why are you like that? You could have done this. Why didn't you care about it? How many times do I have to tell you? Which are also, by the way, common conversations in a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So instead of doing that, I chose the first one, which is, what can I do so that this does not happen again? And his response was, my bad. I think I got too complacent and comfortable. I will try harder.
Nicely done.
And the next morning, he woke up and he tidied up everything before I woke up. And I'm like, oh, you seem to be putting in more effort today. I have to affirm.
Yeah.
Because when he does a good thing, I have to acknowledge. Right? So you seem to put in a lot of effort today. He was like, that's right. So that's our dynamic. But again, I think that's my sharing about dealing with the conflict, because I could have just sulked, give him a cold shoulder, not talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Or I could go the other way around, right? Why didn't you do this? You could have done that. How come? But then anger begets more anger.
Correct.
And I think it will just feed the fire. So my way of dealing is always, How can I do? Because I have to take the first step. How can I do this so that this doesn't happen?
Yeah, and when you take the first step, you're not acting like a victim. So sometimes like, okay, I'm like this because you are like that, you see. But when you do that, you actually take control of the situation and say, I can do something about it. So I'm going to talk about like having difficult conversations and what are some of the healthy way of starting that kind of a difficult conversations, okay? So first of all, you must choose a time when it is not stressful. Number one, the setting and the environment, the setup is quite important. So if you have a difficult conversation, difficult things that you want to share to someone, to your spouse, to your partner, to your family, to your boss, pick the right time when you are calm and when you think that the person that you're speaking to is also open to listening to you. All right? So do not choose a time when there's a deadline, when there's a meeting, when there's presentation and all that, not during when you're busy and all that. Reasonably, now we are all very busy, right? Very hectic, right? So you just have to be quite tuned in and say, okay, I'm going to choose a time. So hopefully there's no distraction as well. So you can say that we're going to have this conversation, set a parameter for 1 hour. So that you know how long to expect. Like if the conversation is going to be 4 hours, oh my gosh, nobody has that kind of energy. So you say, okay, there's something important that I need to talk to you. And I think I like us to dedicate an hour for that. And after that, we can close it. Whether we resolve it or not, we're going to close it. And we will pick it up at another time. So I think setting that kind of control parameter is very, very important. And then when you get into the conversation, always start with I rather than you. So I think you may have heard this in communication skills and stuff like that. I am feeling this way. I wish these are my needs that are not being met. I feel disappointed and uncared for when you do X, Y, Z. The positive action that I want to see would be X, Y, Z. So you would need to tell your partner what is the action, the positive action that you want to see. Right? So that usually they are quite clueless. They may not know. Like the positive action here is, it will be wonderful if you do it without me telling you. Something like that, right? And then be mindful if you feel that your heart rate goes up and you're escalating, you can say, I need to take a break. There's no point in having a conversation when you are very, very triggered. We are going to come back to trigger, right? When you are triggered, your brain will be hijacked and go into a fight and flight mode. You'll be short-circuited. So when you are in that fight and flight mode and you're under threat, you cannot have proper conversation. So don't waste your time. So that is the time when you need to call out and say, we're going to take a break to soothe ourselves. Soothing is part of self-regulation. How do you soothe yourself? Some people go for a run, some people sing, some people just go and watch Netflix. Some people just do something to just calm yourself down before coming back to the topic again. Okay, so these are just some ways where you can have a more productive and helpful conversation. And I think the last one is state the outcome that you want. After this conversation, I hope that we can understand each other better. This conversation, I need to have this conversation not to pinpoint your fault, but so that we can avoid all these small issues.
Yep.
It's very tiring. So that's my goal. What would be your goal? Establish the goal up front. Yeah.
Yep. I think very good pointers. I'm trying to fit what happened into your framework. Okay, so now let's talk about triggers, because everybody has triggers and they have very different triggers, right? So what are triggers and why do we react so much to it?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I thought you have answered. Yeah, triggers. So triggers are very important. You want to pay attention to triggers because sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, why did I react that way? So triggers usually signify that you have some unresolved issues that could be from the past. Almost always from the past. Maybe in a certain relationship, when somebody speaks to you in a certain way, it makes you feel like a bit threatened, So usually there's a story behind your trigger. So you want to be courageous enough to kind of tune in and say, what is it about? With whom do I have this kind of trigger? I can tell you, for me, My mom is a huge trigger. I'm usually very calm, but when you talk about my mom, I'm just shocked. So there's certain people who have that kind of impact on you, and you want to know, like if your partner has that kind of impact on you, then there's some issue that you probably need to deal with, lah. All right, does that answer the question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So just to share on that topic, the awareness of what your triggers are is also important, so that you can let your partner know what are your triggers.
Right, yeah.
Because otherwise, when they are not aware, then they may do certain things, and then they don't understand why do you react so much to it.
Yeah.
When to them it is a simple thing, because it's not their trigger, if that makes sense. Like, so for me, one of my triggers is the feeling of unfair, right? That's why that incident that I shared with you triggered me, because I felt, wow, here I am. And I position it as I'm working hard, eventually it's for the family. I'm not working hard because, I want to make a lot of money for myself. No, it's always been for the family. So I think both of us want the same thing, but I'm feeling that we are not giving equal input. I don't need equal output, but I do want to have that feeling of being supported because we are giving equal input. So that was one of my trigger. And when I explained the trigger to him, I think it helped him understand, why did I react so much to this point? There are other triggers as well. So a person can be a trigger. So I know the thing. But one thing that I find that is helpful to make me less sensitive to my trigger is when I'm generally happy and fulfilled. And that has to do with, are you guys familiar with the love languages? Yeah, so when you keep your love tank full, you are less sensitive to triggers. So my solution has always been keep yourself happy, lah. Like keep your tank full at all times. Then the triggers will not cause as much conflicts and difficult conversations.
And when you are more triggered, then you know that your love tank is emptier also. So it's an indicator to you, right? I also want to highlight that triggers can be quite simple things like when you're hungry.
Sounds like me.
When you're hungry, when you are sick and things like that, then you are not in your full capacity. So you need to know your own capacity as well. So don't have argument when you're very hungry. Go and eat first. Don't fight when you're on an empty stomach, Don't fight on an empty stomach.
I agree.
Yeah. So quite simple. So these are quite practical things that you can actually do.
Yeah.
Have a good sleep. If you're sleep deprived, also don't talk.
I think the last point on this is really about effective communication. And on this one, my one tip I will share later on in the last slide as well is we have to understand that everybody communicates differently. And while the golden rule from childhood is that you have to treat others the way you would like to be treated, the current rule, the today's one is you have to treat others the way they would like to be treated. And that has governed my communication. Like I teach quite a lot on communication in business context, but even in family, the effective communication, like I say, is really about treating others the way they would like to be treated. And you have to also be aware that sometimes the way you communicate stems from how you were raised as a child, right? How your parents communicate with you will form some of these patterns, and the patterns will become a habit. Some of the habits may be useful, some of the habits may not be useful. So again, part of it is also to know which ones are useful and which ones are not useful.
Yeah, on the note of communication, I think what people may not, the one key thing is you need to have clarity yourself. How do you become a good communicator is you yourself needs to know what you want to communicate. You see, so you have to take responsibility in having that clarity in your mind, then you communicate. Because I've seen, like in my office, the couples come in and talk, then like there's no clarity. I just go on a certain topic, and then after that they're like, I'm not sure what you're getting on to, you see. So then you know that there is no clarity. So I think as a communicator, you have to, onus is on you to have that clarity, then you share it, then it's more effective. If you yourself are not clear about what you want, then how do you expect the other person to receive it? So we need to be responsible and ensure that the receiver can really receive your message the way you intended it to be. So I think another tip that I'll give is always ask the listener to give back what they have heard. So can you tell me what you have heard? Can you summarize what I've said so far? Because they may not hear what you're saying. So the only way to ensure that they get what you want, what you're expressing, is for them to play back to you. And if you can validate that perspective, it's even better. All right, so I thought I needed to highlight this because a lot of people know communication is important, but how can you make it clearer and more, easier for the other person to receive? All right, yeah.
Yep. And I guess I am mindful of the time. I think I
Correct.
want to leave the last 10 minutes for questions. Like, we are here to ask questions. We are here to answer questions. So let's go with the last top 3 tips from today. So I'll go first. The 3 tips from me to find your loved one, in navigate this dating and relationship is, number 1, to know your target market, using a business term, to have a clarity on what you want and what you do not want. And number 2 is, like I said, communicate the way the other person prefer to receive, not the way you like to give. And this will be an ongoing thing. I don't think it will ever reach a point where, okay, that's it, we are there. It's an ongoing process. Like, until now, I have to still accept, compromise the fact that we are at a different level of comfort when it comes to being vulnerable. Like, I talk about my feelings openly, but my husband is very scared when it comes to talking about feelings. And every time I ask him, so how do you feel about this? He will say, I don't like to talk about this. Yeah, but again, to give him space, to give him that space, because again, it is really about each other's comfort level. And then the third thing is about having faith, but take concrete action. So what do I mean by this? A lot of the time, some people will tell you, just pray lah. Just have faith lah, If God is meant to give you, He will give you no matter what, even if you don't take any actions. But for me, I don't believe in making God do all the work. You have to put in some work lah. So for me, I believe in, at least I have to create opportunities for God to do the work, right?
Yes.
But eventually, you also cannot go the other extreme, where I have seen some friends around my age who went on like extreme action, where then faith is not part of it anymore, because she was like, no, it's a numbers game, Fel. I went on 50 dates last year. Wow. 50 dates. Do you know how it feels after you date 50 different guys? Do you even remember each one? It became very transactional, and it became, again, a checklist checker. And you also don't want to go to that extreme, because it gets numb, right? After a while. After you see so many people, it gets numb. It's just another one. Oh, this one doesn't tick this box. This one doesn't tick that box. And true enough, I'm not saying whatever, but she is someone like that. Take everything into her own hands. And until today, even though she ticks the boxes of all these guys, she's not with anyone yet. So it is a balance between having that faith, but also creating opportunities so that it makes it easier for God. And whether it is your time yet, not your time yet, my encouragement is that just listen to what He wants for you. I think it was when I surrendered and I said, if you want someone for me, okay. If not, it's okay too. I think I found my purpose in life. That was when he let us meet. And like I said, in God's time, I used to struggle a lot with that. I was very, very impatient, and sometimes I will sing like, "Are you there?" But eventually, when everything has happened, then you sort of look back and feel maybe it was meant to be that way. Yeah. So that's from me. And Winnie, what about you?
Okay, for me, number 1 is know thyself. Right, you've heard a lot about that, right? How important that is for insight, as well as your own needs, and then how do you communicate that. So number 2, which I will expand a little bit more, be find someone who is open. And what do I mean by that? Open will be open to new ideas, open to perhaps seek help. So I want to share a story about my husband and his openness, right? So that's the key thing that I like about my husband. He's very open. And so he is a new Catholic, and when I was approached to become couple presenter for Choice, I kind of say, hey, let's go for this. Let's present together, And he has never attended Choice before. He has never been in a church organization before because he's not from that background. But he said yes. And I was quite impressed. So he said yes, and then he came into it, have no idea what it's about, and then have to started to share his own story, So I was really grateful that he was so open. you know. And then why do you need openness? When you are stuck in the relationship, you want to have a partner who is open to go and seek help with you, right? Because sometimes we need a third party to help. I mean, I'm in this field, so I'm saying it. I want to normalize, you know, seeking help for your relationship, because relationship is hard work. There's no shame in getting help. There are always skills that you can learn. So I always tell like my niece or young people or women usually are okay about seeking help, but it's the men who are a bit more resistant. So ladies, find a man who will go for couples counseling with you, or go for coaching, or go for attend courses on relationship and things like that. You know, you must have that openness, because when you are stuck and your partner don't want to get help, you are truly, truly stuck. And it's very, very painful, okay? So thirdly is to be willing to be uncomfortable. Everything worth doing is uncomfortable, right? So if you prioritize comfort over it, then you're not likely to get what you want. You know, growth involves discomfort. You grow when you push yourself out of your comfort zone. So that will be my parting notes.
Thank you, Winnie. And before we end, I just wanted to add one more thing. A big part of my journey personally, like how I got to this point, was really being in the Choice community. I don't know how many of you have been through Choice. Greg there is the Choice Singles Coordinator. He helps us organize. So do say hi, I'll pick up a brochure. And this is not an advertisement thing. This is really a sharing of my own life story, because if you met me 15 years ago, I was not like this. Like, I came from a family where there were difficult relationships. I came from a family where conflicts always happen. And it was really the Choice community, the prayers, the people that you hang out with that really helped me to learn from couples like Winnie and Stephen and all the other couples. And that really equipped me such that when I got into this relationship, in fact, my husband commented the same thing. He said that compared to his past relationships, he found that ours was very easy. You know, like if you've been through all these things, you hash it out, you trash it out, then when you get into the relationship, it makes it a much less painful journey, because you've sort of seen everything, heard everything, and you've journeyed with yourself. I think the Finding Insight Choice helps a lot with that, for me personally, as well as how to navigate your own triggers and how you communicate. Yeah, so like I said, before you go, please do talk to Greg or pick up a brochure. But I want to thank you. Both of us want to thank you for staying with us throughout this, 1 hour and 20 minutes. And we are now open for questions. Thank you so much. Yay. Any questions? Don't be shy. We are very open to answering your questions. Anyone has any questions?
You need a mic or something. Or comments or clarification? Anything?
Anything you want to share? What is the one takeaway from today? Communication is important. Thank you so much. Anyone else? What has been your key takeaway for the day? How about the beautiful lady in black?
I think knowing yourself, your values, your boundaries, and sticking to them, I think is very important.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. How about someone in the corner? Jacket, white jacket? Yes.
Everything worth doing is uncomfortable. Oh, thank you. Yes.
Oh, yes, uncomfortable. How about our friend in the corner?
John.
What has been your top
Key
takeaway? Conflict management. Interesting that everybody gets very different things. Yes? Sure.
One of the suggestions for communication was that you need to have a goal in mind when you go into the conversation. Could you maybe explain a bit more about what do you mean by, before you go into a difficult conversation, what kind of goal should you be thinking about when you go into the conversation?
Okay. So what I mean is like you have some kind of clarity of the objective of the conversation, and saying, for example, let's say, okay, my goal of having this conversation with you is to resolve this conflict. That's number one. Or my goal of having this conversation is so that we don't have to go through this again. Let's unpack and see how we can do things differently. So you state it quite clearly in some way so that you are on the same page. So if you're talking about other things that are not related to it, then you can say, no, that's not what we're talking about. So you have to be quite clear and precise about the content of your conversation, because it's exhausting. You know, the process is painful, so you have to take care of yourself and say that let's make it constructive, let's make it positive in some ways, so that you don't have to be uncomfortable unnecessarily long. Does that make sense? Yeah, so usually it will be along the line of like, you know, the goal of this conversation is so that we can have a deeper connection. Right? Like if I don't tell you what is really bothering me, we don't have that connection. So that will be usually a key goal. Like I want to talk to you about this because I don't want to feel alienated from you. So emotional connection is important. Anything to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Any last questions before we go? Yes?
I was wondering, like, let's say, like, as a couple therapist are going through because you mentioned about, like, there's no point in, like, you can't resolve something in 2 hours, like, someone will resolve in 6 hours. So I was wondering, if someone, like a couple in a relationship, right, they are trying to resolve something, and they keep hitting walls.
Yeah.
When will you say, or when will you recommend, like, someone to go through, like, couple counseling or therapy?
Oh.
Especially if they're not married couple, and they might think that, like, going through couple therapy is something that only married couples.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. So the first thing is, couples therapy is not for married couple only. I actually have increasing number of like people who are in serious relationship. But of course, you must be serious enough that you want to seek help. So as long as you're in committed relationship, you can come and seek help. And then there are 2 types of couple therapy. Actually, one is like when you have trouble, like big trouble, where they have like some kind of infidelity, third party and all that, then their relationship is on the rock. So that's one type of problem. The other type is couple like enhancement or relationship coaching, whereby you are coming in to learn skills, you do a health check for your relationship. You know, so you come in and say, you know, we might have these areas that are struggling with, so we want to take a look at it and see how we can resolve it. So you can come in with very, very specific goals also, you know. So that will fall under relationship coaching, and that can be done anytime. I'm currently working with couple who have just dated for half a year, but they see the potential of going forward, and they wanted to come in and say, I want to sort out things first. And I say, wonderful. I mean, that's the whole idea, right? The early intervention is always the best. Always remember that you cannot treat cancer at stage 4, you know. And I have a lot of cases at stage 4, and I'm very sad because I can't help them. And so I'm very thankful for this, because I can share with all of you about early intervention.
Yep.
You know, about how you can prepare better so that you can have lasting and wonderful relationship, you see. So there are skills that you can pick up even before you become couple up. Okay?
For sure.
Yeah.
Chang, any last things? Yes?
Sorry, I just wonder how you can overcome uncomfortability to express yourself. Like, for example, how do I say this without saying an example, a concrete example? Okay. For example, sorry, I cannot construct it properly, but help me construct it properly. For example, your love language. Okay, I'll just say it from my own experience. My love language, for example, is acts of service. Is this on record? Oh God. Okay, my love language, for example, is acts of service. Thank you. And my boyfriend is quality time. Then we had this argument, like it's petty argument for sure, but I was a bit like anxious about it, and I feel very uncomfortable to talk about it, but I was impressed the way he like initiated to talk about it, and I find it very like good to find a guy like this, as it's very rare
Thank you for sharing, though.
Yes, that's right.
A
Yeah.
lot of courage as well. But yeah, I wanted to know, like, the tips on how to overcome this, expressing your uncomfortability of, it's quite tough to express yourself when you know that you're the one who did wrong. Yeah, so any advice on that?
Sure. Yeah, first
I
of
wanted to like know more of the details. What is it?
No, it's
Very
okay.
Small, actually.
it's okay.
It's
Yeah.
very common for girls to like say words sarcasm sometimes, especially
Okay.
when they're on their like this day of the month. So it all started there, and I said sorry to him, but it feels very uncomfortable to like say it out loud, lay it all out like that.
Okay.
So yeah, any advice on that? It would
All
be
right.
really helpful.
First of all, thank you so much for being vulnerable. And I think that is how you start. You just say it when you're uncomfortable. So give me a round of applause.
Yay!
So having a difficult conversation, start by doing it. It will be uncomfortable, but if you do 100 times, it will get better. So that's number one. It takes practice. So it's a muscle that you build. The first time is very hard. The second time will be still hard, but the 100th time, it will be better. So you're also talking about like how do you acknowledge your own faults, right? Maybe you recognize that you're in the wrong. So then that is to pray for the humility. We can also use the virtues. We can cultivate virtues of humility and courage to kind of like say that when I'm wrong, help me to be humble enough to express it, to apologize. You see, and I mean it's wonderful that your partner is open and wanting to address the issue, so to speak. So that's good news in some sense. But for yourself, it's also to like be kind to yourself, right? Be gentle and kind and say that, okay, I may not say it perfectly, but who needs to be perfect? So the first time when you say that, okay, you can express to your partner and say, this is really hard for me to say. It's very uncomfortable for me to say, but I want to practice because you're important to me. And so I'm going to say it imperfectly. Okay?
Well said.
Yeah. All right. I think we need to say...
Yeah, we have been given the time.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Yeah?
Yay!
Yay. And please feel free to connect with the Choice people, and we'll be around in case you want to ask in private.